Yeah, I agree with you. If all we're talking about is this, we probably need to go into executive. But we talk about like the junkyard ordinance, we may want to.
I'm gonna start recording.
Walter, when did you leaving?
I'm
Tomorrow?
driving to, flying tomorrow, but what I do is stay at the Park and Fly at the Comfort Inn in Revere.
Oh. And you're gone how long?
I'll be back Friday night.
Oh, so you're not going long.
This game has been going on since 1986.
Oh, is that right?
It was the prime CEO's poker game. He's 88 now, so he doesn't play anymore.
Well, we should call her or 10?
9:59.
59. This gal is very busy. Who's the co-op used for?
Patrick Miller.
Oh, yeah, they have to.
Yeah.
They don't use. That's a good thing. Can't think of his name.
Paul Gibbons.
Gibbons, yeah. Well, I know.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks a lot. No. Well, I think I should call it, don't you?
Oh, there she is.
Oh, boy, right on time.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we've had some complaints about people not being able to hear us.
It's a little echoey, but it's okay.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna call this meeting of the South Bronx Board of Selectmen to order at 10:01. I don't have an agenda in front of me, but are there any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Since there's no public here or on Zoom, I'm assuming there isn't. And then the third agenda item is to discuss a legal matter with our attorney. We're here primarily to follow up on our meeting of last week or 2 weeks ago between the select board and the facilities, community center, library community center, facilities committee meeting. I had put on the agenda anticipated executive session. I probably should have been more accurate and said possible. I think I'd like to do as much of this in public as possible, but I would like to hear from you, Kristen, if you feel that any of this should be done in executive session, or if if not. I guess what I don't want is for folks to assume that the draft that we received from you is sort of our draft and as a board, because we haven't had a chance to discuss it or talk about it as a board. And things have a way of taking on their own life sometimes very quickly. So do you have any thoughts on that, or if when we're going along, if you feel that something perhaps should be talked about in the executive session, could you let us know?
Sure.
And just what are your thoughts about that?
So we definitely can have any part of this discussion in executive session because it's consultation with your legal counsel, which is, the only hook that's necessary for that allowance. But I also wanted to emphasize that this is my draft starting from complete scratch. And to the extent the board feels like, putting this out in public would be premature right now, we could absolutely have this discussion in executive session. And then, of course, follow it up with a public session either today or some other time to go through with more explanation to the public of how we got where we are.
Okay, thoughts on this? Or
I agree. I originally did not think we would need to go into executive session, but I agree that because we're discussing the draft, that I'd rather do that.
And I know you had.
I was just asking the question
Okay,
because
so
it seemed to me in general, a warrant article, because would seem to me to be always public.
Yeah.
But given there are a couple things in here that maybe we shouldn't prematurely distribute to the public.
yeah, well, that was my feeling. I mean, I guess the way I look at it is this is kind of, we're reviewing a work product that our attorney has prepared
Right.
for us to kind of, it then at some point will become our document as opposed to her document. And at this point, it's not our document. So,
All right, so I move we go into executive session pursuant to MSRA 405, section 6, paragraph E, I think.
Second.
okay, further discussion. I just do want to comment that it is, I would say probable, certainly possible, that we will come out of executive session and have an open discussion and perhaps make some decisions, perhaps, as Kristen alluded to earlier, or recess this meeting to a time certain or something like that, although that's going to get tricky with Jeff's and Walter's schedules. And plus, I feel like we need time's pushing us here, so we may have to do something today. So with that in mind, all those in favor of entering executive session? Aye. So if you could. We are. Okay. I'm just going to close this. Oh, sorry. Okay. I don't know how folks want to handle this. I have several questions and comments that I've marked up. In some ways, I think it makes more sense to start with the bylaws because I think the bylaws sort of inform the warrant question personally, but I don't know if you two share that thought.
Yeah, I mean, the warrant is, it refers to the bylaws.
Right. So do we want to just kind of walk through this, and if someone has a comment on line 1 or a question, they can throw it out there and we can maybe kind of have a sense of the board and do it that way, just sort of walk right down through it?
Sure.
Okay.
So do you have me on the big screen so that if I shared the document, you could watch me edit as we go along?
Yep.
Okay. I will need access to do that though from Terry.
Oh, you have to tell me how to do it.
There are two ways to do it. You can either, I think, click on my name and right click and just make me the host temporarily, or I think you can click on that and enable screen sharing.
Major host.
Perfect. Okay.
We're gonna lose you.
You're gonna lose my face, which is just fine. Okay. Can you see my document?
And we can see your face too.
Oh, that's right. I just got smaller probably.
You got a lot smaller. All
Okay.
right, you go to the top.
Go to the top, and I know that the name for starters needs to be fixed, and I welcome your suggestions.
Well, personally, I feel we should just be consistent and call it the Facilities Library Center and, Library and Community Center Auxiliary. I think to call it Guilford Butler sort of implies or could imply to certain people that we're talking about the existing building. So that would carry right on down through everywhere. This is a minor thing. I'm not thrilled with the name auxiliary, but
It does not have to be called auxiliary. Obviously, we can't call it a committee. It could be association. I really don't care.
no, I know. I mean, this is not a hill to die on for me by any means, but auxiliary sort of reminds me of like a fire department or an ambulance. I don't know why it does, but it does.
No, well, it should, because that's usually how they exist. But people understand what that means, that it's a sort of a fundraising entity, you know, on the side of with no governance authority over. So that's why I jumped to that, but there could certainly be any number of, you know,
Actually, the more
alternatives.
or I begin to like it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I kind of like it, because it does fire departments and ambulances, so people understand what it is.
Okay. Line 2.
And
Any questions, comments?
Nope.
Line 3. Obviously, we need to change the Guilford Butler, but that will go through everywhere. Line 4.
Do you want to
before we
just, real quick, do you want to just call it the project as the shorthand rather than the library and
Sure.
community center project, which is a little clunky?
Yeah.
Okay.
Line 4, before we get to number 1. Line 4.1. I guess I just have a question there. Is it possible, and should we accommodate for this, that some funding source may not allow the asset, the cash, to be turned over to the town? That it has to be expended directly? And we don't even need to answer that question today, I mean, this minute, but,
So I am more used to seeing strings requiring just that the, you know, that the donation be used for the stated purposes, and that if it goes to anybody else, that they carry the same responsibility. I think we would maybe just not allow the acceptance of any funds that wouldn't allow that.
well, then that gets us to another point about acceptance of funds, but, so we need to, all right, maybe need to make a note on that. And Walter, you had a comment?
Yeah, is IRS 501c3 governing this or not?
The intention is that this organization would apply for and receive 501c3.
So my personal experience has been when you do that, on dissolution, any remaining funds have to be distributed to a like not-for-profit, and I'm wondering if the town qualifies.
I will have our corporate people check on it before we go forward with this, but this is generally speaking language that's in every one of these similar bylaws that I've looked at.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit too. It typically, in a lot of them, they don't specify what's gonna happen upon dissolution. So it becomes open. So then you have to refer to normally the state, whichever office of the state has jurisdiction over these types of entities, which for us is the AG's office. And then they tell you what you can and can't do. When I was involved in one that dissolved, the AG's office told us that we almost had to give it to the town. Okay, so they maintained that there was no other like organization for the fire department auxiliary. And so the money had to go to the town. And that's because it wasn't spelled out in the bylaws where the monies would go.
Okay, so you're gonna just double check on that. It's really there's sort of two issues there that we talked about. One is donations or grants that would prohibit it going directly to the town in the form of cash. And so that sort of that acceptance issue. And then the second issue that we just talked about.
Yes.
Okay, number two. I have I jotted down a comment here and then I saw you dealt with it later, but in the parentheses, you said, except that reasonable compensation may be paid for services rendered by private individuals, which I'm fine with. But later on, you make it clear that that does not include the directors. Which I'm also fine with. So I guess I have no comment at this point.
See, I read it just, reasonable reimbursement may be paid to members, directors, or officers.
Reimbursement
Right, reimbursement.
for out-of-pocket expenses, reimbursement. I'm talking about pay,
Oh, okay.
compensation.
Do you,
Is that
I
your-
mean, if we want to be absolutely clear, I just changed this last sentence to say,
Yeah, and I think you say it at another place as well.
okay, we'll check as we go down.
So the example here is a director has some particular skill set that they apply to this, and they can't build a corporation
Right. They
if
could get,
they're a director.
they could get reimbursement or a ream of paper if they, or stamps or mileage, but yeah. Okay, but we don't want to handcuff them in, say, hiring a grant writer and being able to pay that grant writer, either as potentially as an employee, although that's a discussion for later, or as a contractor. So I think we're okay. Good?
And just to be clear, we are making a decision here that we won't have a paid director.
Yeah, I think we are.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a draft. I mean, we may revisit that with this, because I feel we need to talk to this, once we have our draft, we need to talk it through with the facilities committee again. They may have different ideas on that. Yeah. I had no issues on 3.
I would hope not.
I made a note to myself on, any issue on 3A, B, or C? I did make a note to myself, should there be a D that just applies to members? Because this is a membership corporation, correct?
Sorry, so what would you look to change?
Well, my understanding is in Maine, there's two types of private nonprofits. One is a membership corporation where virtually anybody can join as a member. And then the other is sort of a closed corporation where that's not the case.
Right,
That's
and,
the
and this is the latter.
Oh, it is a lot, because you talk about membership.
I think that's actually a typo, in the membership of the board of directors is how it should read.
Well, in another place, like you talk about the members meeting.
Members of the board, it should be. Hold on one second.
Okay, well, then that brings up a larger discussion.
Well, actually, that's a good point. Yeah, it is a larger discussion that we need to have. Do we want it to just, be a board-run organization, or do we want them to have open membership to help with the efforts, but those members don't control it?
I personally prefer having it open. I would like to see it be a community effort, and anybody who wants to join can join. Now, that doesn't make you a board of directors, and I don't know what powers and duties the membership, you do talk later about an annual meeting of the members, but there's no powers or duties assigned to the members.
And just jump 2 paragraphs ahead, and membership of the organization shall be open to all. And it doesn't qualify that with membership on the board.
Yeah.
So I took this to read that it was a membership corporation.
I took it to read that way too. Which
Oh,
is
no,
why
you should. Yeah, I'm wrong about that.
brings me back to the simple question, should we also have a D that applies to members?
Well, so the C then, the way it is written, would be in the membership or the board of directors. So
Yeah.
membership would cover the members.
Okay. Okay, all right. In the membership or the board of directors. I just thought it might be a little clearer if we just said C, board of directors, and D, members, but anyways. Or in the membership or the board of directors. Okay,
If I capitalize the M there, that might
that actually does it.
clarify it. Yeah.
Anybody have an issue with 4? 5? We don't need a more specific address, or?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, I did have a question on 1. On Article 2:1, it says the membership shall be open to all subject to the provisions of appointment set forth in Article 3, but Article 3 talks of, I don't see any discussion about members there. Talks about the board.
Right. So I'm wondering if what we should do is create a second there are board of directors who actually have voting rights. And then there's an associate membership, essentially, that they can be appointed by the board as associate members. They have no authority, but may participate in meetings.
Well, I think that gets away from the idea of anybody can join if they want to.
Well, okay, anybody can join. How?
Well, yeah, you're right. if it is a membership corporation, I think it needs to be, yeah, how do you join? Yeah, I guess you just say, I'm joining.
And is it really anybody, or is it residents, or?
I don't think I want to limit to residents. I mean, we got a lot of,
Yeah, I wouldn't do residents for any of this.
yeah. But I think I guess the way I look at it is if we're really trying to make this sort of a community spirit organization, the broader we can make it in terms of participation. You know, I mean, sometimes places will charge a fee, you know, to join. You pay $1 and you're a member for life. I don't even want to go that far. I guess you could just sign up and say, I want to be a member. But that still also begs the question, does the membership have any powers or duties? And if they don't, why would we have an annual meeting of the membership?
To participate in the process, to give their input and have, you know, particular kind of say over what happens without being the ones who actually vote.
Okay, so more like a public hearing.
Sort of.
And I'm fine with that. I mean, I just think that when we get to that section, we maybe want to make that a little clearer what the purpose of the annual meeting is. Because you do deal with it later on.
Something like that, perhaps.
Yeah, although.
But the
I
public
hate-
is permitted to participate too.
Right. Why don't we terminate that discussion until we get down to the section on the annual meeting? That might make it easier, rather than having it in two different places. All right. Okay. All right, so we good on two, we may revisit two, but are we good with it so far? Okay. 3. I guess, are we good with 7? Number 1, 7 members. Okay, in A, I think the select board shall, at the formation of the corporation. I'm just wondering if whoever does these appointments, whether it's the select board and or others, if we need a little bit of time. Should it say something like, shall the select board within 60 days of the formation of the corporation, or something like that?
I'm good with leaving it open, actually.
Well, it says at the formation, which means, to me, like right away, gives us no time to solicit people or.
Yeah, the assumption is that you have that dialed in ahead of time.
Yeah.
Following is a little bit broader if you'd like that better.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I would like to see I would like to see the select board not make all the appointments. My overarching goal here is to try to pull together the facilities committee, the library, and all their volunteers and the select board. And I would like to see the select board maybe appoint 3 members, the facilities committee maybe appoint 3 members, and the librarian appoint a member. Or something of that to that effect.
What if you have a nominating committee comprised of those people who nominates people to be appointed by the select board?
Seems like a layer of complication.
Sure, it takes a little autonomy away from you all too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not wedded to the numbers, but I would definitely like to see the facilities committee have some say in who's on this.
So what about if you did 3 by the select board and 3 by the select board who should be nominated by a nominating committee comprised of the facilities committee and the librarian?
I like that.
Well, that only gives us 6.
Well, yeah, 7 is a.
Oh, as a member of the, well, that's another discussion. Do we?
Yeah, we're gonna have to switch that. So if we want to have the select board member or not, that has a difference.
Right. So do you want to jump to that select board member discussion quickly, and then we'll jump back? I guess that's a simple question. Do we favor having a select board member on this corporation board?
I strongly support it, at least initially.
Well, welcome.
I supported it initially, and it's interesting. I've recently seen what happens when you don't have a select board member on the Owlshead Corporation Board.
I agree.
Communications, there's a communication gap.
Mhm.
I mean, I hope you guys think that I kept you informed during my.
Yeah, but you're right.
So,
I mean, I see it. I don't have a problem with that. I guess I'm not sure I like the idea initially. I mean, I think the communication gap would open up. I guess I just like to, we could always amend the bylaws at some point. I guess I just like to keep it simple and say, there shall be a member of the select board.
Yeah, and that's exactly my intention.
Okay.
It is that if that's gonna go away, it's because the bylaws get changed, because they find that it's not necessary.
Okay.
the only downside to that is, does it set up, so there's the board of directors, and all pigs are equal except the select board member. Does that person have implied authority and powers because of his or her elected position? That would be the argument for not having a select board member on the board.
right.
Which is really one of the reasons I do want to select a member on. I mean, because later on, which I think is a good addition to this one, the select board has veto power of bylaw changes, which I think is exactly appropriate. That's my biggest fear, is that it runs away. And these are the 2 ways that you can control the runaway bylaws. And
Yeah.
and
Well, having one vote on the board is not gonna control that, but I know what you're saying. So I guess we're good with that. So now let's jump back up to the appointments. So we got 6 members, I guess. So I guess I would, I really would like to see the librarian have an appointment to this committee. I really want to try to pull these 3 entities together, the select board, the facilities committee. So, and I personally would just as soon not complicate this with a nominating committee. Just have that facilities committee appoint 2 members. And it can be there, it could be someone on their committee. And maybe we should even require that.
So here's
One of
my concern about that is just, how did you establish that committee?
We appointed that committee by the pursuant to that
Warrant article.
pursuant to the town meeting warrant article, Article 10.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me. And did that article say, you know, that you shall appoint the facilities planning committee and it shall have these authorities?
It didn't. It was amended on the floor. Can you grab that as it was amended?
Yeah,
I don't think it said that we shall. I think it said that it authorizes us to
Okay,
create this committee.
Right, and the amendment was about, should circumstances change dramatically,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
But we should have it anyways, because we're gonna, but.
so I guess my concern with that is just that at its heart, that's a ad hoc committee and not an ordinance-based committee or something that was created by town meeting. Same with the librarian, it's not like an official position. So now we have this entity that doesn't really have official roles, taking an official role of making an appointment.
Making an appointment to a private corporation.
So, well, yeah, I agree. But they are public entities, so it's a little strange. All I was saying is have those people make a nomination and the select board does the appointment, but that you have to essentially approve that appointment.
Well, in other words, sort of like, okay, sort of like superintendents with teachers, the school committee has to appoint teachers, but they can only appoint teachers that the superintendent recommends to them. They can't reach around and appoint somebody else.
Exactly. So
If we
I would
could-
say
Okay. with that. Because the other thing we gotta remember, the three of us aren't gonna be here forever either. And this is envisioned to be a long-term process. Well, it wouldn't be at its discretion. It would just be, oh, I see what you're saying.
do you want to have your members have 1-year term?
Well, that was a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
was-
it gets complicated if we say, you know, the select board appoints 2 people for a 2-year term, 1 for a 1-year term, and then the other group appoints. Why don't we just, well, I don't know, we could leave it up to your discretion to set the terms,
Yeah,
to set staggered terms of up to 2 years. That way the person who's putting themselves forward as a candidate could say, well, I'm willing to commit to this for 1 year. And the next person would say, oh, I'm fine with 2 years, kind of like any
Yeah.
other staggered terms people might run for.
and I personally would like to go, I'd like to go some people longer terms. I think we're looking at this as a longer. I'd like to see at least a couple of 3 years and a couple of, maybe, what do we got, 7?
Yeah, but one of them is a select board member.
Right.
It's done annually.
Yeah. So I'd like to see like maybe 2, 2, and 2 or something with the one who's a select board member.
That's what I like.
2 or 3 years, 2 at 1 and 2 at, because I think the continuity is important, particularly initially. And I want people to realize what they're sort of stepping up for.
What's
You want me to-
what's the facilities committee's name again?
Hold on, it's in the article. You want me to read you that article?
Sure, if you have it.
To see if the town, no, it does say direct. I'm sorry. To see if the town will direct the select board at the recommendation of the Guilford Butler Futures Committee to create a library and community center facility committee. So it's a library and community center facility committee to plan and fundraise for the construction of a new building consisting of 4,500 square feet of approximately 45 to house a town-owned library and community center. And then it was amended by, which has nothing to do with the committee, by adding the words, notwithstanding the Futures Committee's recommendation, this article shall not be construed as preventing the facility committee from reevaluating possible renovation of the existing building if the committee finds renovation advisable due to changing circumstances. I'm just giving you some time to edit. So can you read what you got, or if you're done?
Yep, I'm done. 3 directors shall be appointed by the select board at its discretion. 2 directors shall be nominated by the Library and Community Center Facilities Committee. And 1 director shall be nominated by the town librarian, with such nominations to be confirmed by the select board. Terms of the directors shall be set by the select board and staggered from 1 to 3 years.
Okay, does that imply that I always struggle with this language. It says to be confirmed by the select board. Should we say something like must? But that doesn't mean we have to confirm them.
Well, I thought that's what you wanted, actually, was that your,
No, but I mean,
Somewhat
if they put 2 people in front of us, we have the option of not appointing someone.
is that what you want?
No, I guess not. No, okay, I'm good with that.
I think that there is wiggle room in the idea that the confirmation or the nomination is to be confirmed. But I would assume that you would use that only in extreme circumstances.
That's why I kind of like it.
And the library director and the facilities committee will have an opinion on this.
Is her title the library director?
Yes.
Yeah,
And that is a municipal function,
Yep.
department. Okay.
and there's nothing in there that prevents, say, one of the facilities committee members wants to be on this committee. There's nothing that prevents that, or both of them, for that matter. Correct?
Sorry, say that again.
There's nothing in the language, in your opinion, that would prevent a sitting facilities committee member to be on this board. They could be one of the 2, or 2 of the 2.
Yeah, but of course they wouldn't participate in the vote on themselves as a nominee.
Understood, but
Yep.
there's nothing that, because again, the idea is to kind of weave this together, so I would actually like to see. I initially suggested that one of their 2 be a facility committee member, just like one be the select board, but they may not want to do that dual role, so. We can leave that open, I guess, but there's nothing in your mind that would prevent that.
Correct.
Okay,
So what about the library director's position in all of this? Would you be interested in striking town administrator and having the librarian be the ex officio non-voting member?
Okay, you moved down, all right.
Yeah, I have.
Well, I definitely would be in favor of striking the town administrator, and she would too. So my thought was we either strike it completely or, I mean, I'm just gonna be brutally honest. Penny is an ex officio member of, if you will, of the facilities committee. And that's a sore spot with her. She's our librarian because she can't vote. So I guess in my opinion is, I just assume just strike it. But I don't know how
So-
to walk.
You think that she would not want to be a participant as a voting member of this auxiliary?
I think nominate someone that will satisfy her.
I mean, if you think about its function, she really shouldn't care so much about the fundraising. What she cares about is the planning and the facilities part of things.
That's
So,
why I would strike it.
yeah. Sorry, going back to A, are you okay with the positions being refilled for 2-year terms across the board once they've been staggered?
Oh, yeah, that was another comment. I would like to have the appointments continue the way they were.
By the select board?
No, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with Jeff. My fear is of this running away, and I don't like the fact that after the initial appointments, the directors get to then appoint vacant.
Yeah, I think that's different.
No, it's right there.
Shall be filled by appointment of the remaining directors.
I just like to keep it the same structure. So if a selectman appointee resigns, then we appoint it. If a facilities committee nominated person resigns, they nominate someone else and we confirm it again.
So the reason why I did this is because I thought it might pass muster under 501c3 a little bit better to have some,
Okay.
eventual distance between the board and the commit or the corporation. But what we'll do, and I agree with you. I mean, that would be my preference too, is why don't we put that in there and then see what my corporate folks think about that. And if it's too much control long-term by the select board. There's a provision in 501c3 that basically says if it's an instrument of government, that it can't be a 501c3. And so that's what I was worried about is, are you just kind of making this a town department, but calling it a corporation? So like I said, let's do what you want to do here, but just be aware that we may have to put some distance over time. And the way to sort of address that on the back end, if I'm told that we can't have that, is make the terms longer.
Yeah.
Initially, right?
Well, and I think your real question was, is 2-year terms, follow on 2-year terms appropriate, or should we go to 3-year terms for everyone?
Oh,
That's what I'm-
I just assumed we'd go to 3-year terms for everybody once we got through the initial staggering.
How long are we thinking for the whole project if, fundraising would go as planned?
5 to 10.
5 to 10?
Yeah, certainly 5. I don't think anybody's really got an outside.
Right? In my mind, if there isn't really good positive action in 10 years, then we're at the point of switching to some other option.
Yeah.
But I think it took St. George close to 10 years.
Okay, so I changed that to upon expiration of the terms of the initial directors appointed to 1-year terms, or no, of the initial directors, regardless of the term. Those seats shall be filled for 3-year terms in the same manner in which the seat was initially filled.
So in other words, once we're done with this, we'll be staggered in perpetuity, so to speak.
Correct. And if, for instance, the person who was initially nominated by the library director, their term's up, then you would ask the library director for another nomination and fill that seat for 3 years.
Right, and if somebody quit in the middle of it, we would fill it to when the initial appointment would have expired.
Let's look at vacancies real quick. Do I have that?
Trying to find out how members.
So we currently have it, vacancies shall be filled by appointment of the board of directors. So let's fix that when we get there.
Okay, so we'll jump back up and keep walking down.
Yep.
All right. I can't remember where we were.
Strike C.
D,
Oh, we struck
struck C.
C, quorum. Okay, any questions on D, problems? Yeah.
Well, it always comes up. If you have a quorum, which would be 4 people, and 3 of them vote for and 1 votes against, does it carry, or do you need all 4 to vote for?
The vote of said quorum shall be the act of the board of directors. I don't like the way that reads. Let's change what this means is that it's a majority of the quorum.
So in other words, if in Jeff's example, if it's a 3-1 vote, it would carry.
Correct. Let's use simple language and say the board of directors shall act by majority vote of those present and voting.
Right.
Perfect.
Anybody have an issue with E?
No, I actually like the way that's written. That ought to be our, it's our,
Does anybody have an issue with F?
except for town and stuff.
Town of Thomaston.
Oh, yeah, you got Town of Thomaston.
No. It's weird.
You have auditor. Should we also include attorney? Last
Auditor.
sentence.
Oh, right.
If
Sure.
we just are uncomfortable with something, should we? G, I think 24 hours is awful quick.
I mean, this board is not going to have to act quickly. I don't think so. We could
And I don't-
certainly.
I mean, we try in town here, we don't always comply with it, but we try to post all our meetings, planning board or any, select board with a 5-day notice.
Well, that's what I was just writing in, so we're good.
Well, yeah, except, I mean, you could have an emergency. If, say, you had a grant that you had to have in by a certain date or signed by a certain date or something. So I guess.
I mean, we can add a little caveat at the end that just says,
Yeah, I just don't want to handcuff, say, oh, we can't vote to sign this because.
Yeah, she's got, except where such notice is
Yeah.
not practicable.
That's good. Okay. All right, G. Oh, we just did G. H.
Oh, yeah, we did, yeah, it's now G, but now that I think about this, we might want to nix this since we're requiring them to act in public.
Yeah, that was my thought. I had a big no next to it. It smacks of secrecy to me. Okay, vacancies. We're back to that question about how the vacancies are filled. And you're gonna check on that with corporate people?
Yeah, for now, we'll say vacancies shall be filled by appointment in the same manner in which the seat was initially appointed. The
That would be-
director.
And that would be for the duration of the current term.
Right.
Okay. But we need to revisit that. If that doesn't work, maybe we can think about some hybrid. But.
Oh, yeah, we
Okay.
do have directors shall serve without compensation.
Yeah, I saw that.
So we could
So what about
just
office?
delete that.
Oh, because you dealt with it before?
Right.
And what about offices?
The only thought I have about offices, you mean in terms of compensation?
Yeah,
I certainly wouldn't make them compensated as a matter of course. The only thing that I've seen from time to time with corporations in general, but particularly very small nonprofits, is nobody wants to be the treasurer. And so you may find yourself wanting to go outside the interested people to find somebody who's a suitable treasurer, and then you would be able to pay that person. But I would just as soon have a treasurer who's appointed, and then if you absolutely had to, contract with some outside accountant, which that other provision about hiring professionals as needed would cover.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But I don't think, does the initial language where we just, does that apply to offices as well?
Yes.
Because they're from the directors.
Okay, because
Right.
of the direct,
Director compensated, so a director as an
and no
officer.
member director.
Or officer of the corporation.
Well, that's a distribution on fund. Reasonable reimbursement, maybe, yes, okay, I think we're good.
Yep. Compensation shall not be paid to members, directors, or officers.
Okay.
So what's now H, honorary non-voting?
That should be just deleted, right?
That's what I think, if we're giving members some, an actual class of members with authority.
Oh, I apologize. Can I jump? So we agree we're gonna delete that? Everybody go with that?
Mhm.
Okay. Can I jump back to F for 1 second? So an executive session. So is it your opinion that because we're incorporating Maine's Freedom of Access Act, that the board of directors could do business in executive session if they felt the need to? In accordance with that act?
I think it'd be required to in some cases. Things that.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to be clear about with this is, although we're going to make them subject to freedom of access, we're not conceding that they're a government entity that's otherwise subject to it. So I want to add something there, not that that answers your question, but yeah, I mean, if we're just saying that they're bound by Freedom of Access Act, then it would also sort of assume that they're allowed to have executive sessions.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it worked, that kind of worked both ways.
Yeah, I mean, if you weren't comfortable with that, we could say, except that there shall be no executive session.
I'm comfortable with it, and I can see circumstances where they might want to do that.
And I think there are circumstances where they would be required to do it, some other legal reason why information they're discussing can't be given to the public, so.
Yeah, I mean, you know, an extreme example is, geez, I heard a rumor the treasurer ran off with $80,000.
$14,000.
And before you made that too public, you might want to
Yeah.
get your facts straight. I don't know. Okay, sorry to jump us back.
No, and I'm glad you did, because it gave me this other thought. So I'm changing this to say, although the corporation shall not be considered a public entity, all meetings of the Board of Directors shall be conducted as if bound by Maiden's Freedom of Access Act.
Why wouldn't you just say, although the corporation is not a public entity? Period.
That's fine.
And then we go to the IRS and say, no, see here, it says it's not.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
I go by the duck theory though, but.
Well, the fact of the matter is, once you create this entity, you don't control it.
Right.
So that's what I would go back to. But at the very least, to say, you know, we're not conceding that it's a government entity, that would help.
Okay, we ready? Everybody fine with the offices?
Yep.
Everybody fine with 2? Everybody fine with 3? Do we really need to complicate this with a finance committee?
No, I don't think so.
And I guess I just put a question mark, the treasurer may serve without bond. I always put a question mark next to that, but I guess I'm okay.
No, I marinated on that for a long time too. I worried about finding a suitable person if they have to go out and get a bond, and then who's going to pay for the bond.
Yeah. Yeah. But they can, and at some point they can do that, so.
Right.
4, secretary. I don't know who the clerk is. All of a sudden that word appears in the last sentence.
That is my error. The draft I was working from called it a clerk, but I changed it to secretary.
And I would like to see copies of the minutes sent to the town clerk. Does that make it too close to a governmental? It's not that critical.
No, I think it's fine. I'm trying to figure out where it should go.
And I wouldn't have thought of that if you hadn't used the word clerk there.
Yeah, well,
I can just see, some people might be interested in seeing these posted on a town website or something like that, and I'm not sure this group's gonna go out and get their own website. They might.
But, and the most reliable retention agency in town is the office, actually, but it's also personality or personal. It's a much better retention agency now than it was a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure. It typically has been, and it is again.
There's a gap.
All right, so the secretary shall submit copies of minutes of any meeting, the board of directors to the South Thomaston Town Clerk.
Fine. And anybody 5? We've already talked about,
Right.
Yeah, we just need to refer back to.
yeah, 6 you struck,
Hold on. Ooh, I'm guessing then 5 is pretty much duplicative of what we have above.
The only thing that, oh, no,
no,
yeah,
that's offices.
Oh, officers, correct. Yes.
So we're good with 5?
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe you should capitalize that or something, just to.
What, any officer? Well,
I
we're
don't
in
know.
we're in that section. The fact that my brain is not working currently is not an indication that it's unclear.
Okay, right, we are in offices, okay. 7. Okay. Article 5. 1.
Good.
2.
Good.
3.
3.
I mean, excuse me.
1.
Wow.
6, 1.
1. Sorry, talk about just getting on a roll. 6, I was reading something. 6, 1.
Good.
Do we want to go back to the 5-day notice here as opposed to appropriate public notice? Or just leave it alone?
We could just refer back to the other paragraph.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Actually, never mind. That language was in the 5 days was about special meetings. Let's just say. I mean, it is the annual meeting. We should make it a little bit longer, I would think.
Yeah. But I was thinking
10,
at least-
14.
Well, you can call a special town meeting at 7, so. 10's fine with me. I just, you guys got a thought?
I kind of like the appropriate, I like vague rather than specific on notices.
Well, I guess maybe we're gonna keep it appropriate. Walter?
Well, the only thing is that there's been more controversy over meetings posted, not posted, how long, blah, 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 in the last 2 years than in the previous 20, as best I can tell.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see a minimum number of days.
Yeah, that's,
So I guess we're back to 2 of us want a minimum number of days.
Yeah, again, it's not a hill to die.
7 works?
Yep.
Works for me. Okay. All right. 7-1. I just have a question here because I see this group as doing 2 things. One is applying for and soliciting grants, and the other thing is soliciting donations. Should we include that word in there? shall have the power to accept grants and donations.
Yes, hold on a second.
And I'm struggling with the wording a little too, with the of.
Yeah. Well,
accept-
I mean, it all refers to personal property or assets probably should be added. Let's just start from scratch here.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe personal property was money.
Well, money is personal property, but
Thought a donation might be a,
Shares.
we don't want to have to hire a lawyer to figure out how to read this.
the only thing I was thinking is, like akin to main, public radio, give us our car, we'll sell it and use the money towards our asset. I don't know if we want the ability to like take things in kind and turn them into cash.
I think that's fine. I just wanted the word donations in there. And I didn't understand the word of whole.
I think you don't necessarily need clearly spelled out authority to sell something that's been given to you. I think all we need is the authority to accept it.
And that's a truncated sentence. To accept grants of personal property.
So now it's to accept grants or donations of money or personal property.
So, can you go back just a second, sorry. So grant or donation of money or personal property. So there are three different things. A grant being sort of, let's say, a grant from the federal government, a donation being someone writes a check, and the third thing intended to be someone gives us their Mercedes-Benz and we sell it.
Yeah, or somebody gives, $100,000 of windows.
Yeah, okay. But we do not, the corporation does not have the authority to accept real property.
Correct.
Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good with the rest of one? We good with two? Three. I just thought being paid over the town on a quarterly basis was awful quick. Does that? And I guess this weaves into a bigger question. This entity is gonna need money to raise money.
I was just going to say that we need at least less reasonable operating expenses of the corporation.
That was where I was going. And I guess it's gonna be up to the corporation to make it clear that if I give them, I don't know, $500, that they can spend it either for further fundraising activities or for planning or construction. So really, it's three things my donation could go to, right? Or administrative. Well, it's for the fundraising, administrative. My spot. You see what I'm driving at?
I do.
I mean, someone may donate $15,000 and that 15,000, never, not a dime of it ever goes into the planning and construction of the project. It goes to further fundraising activities. Potential. You gotta strike GBS too.
Thank you. So I guess question one, do you feel comfortable with the board of directors making its own determination about what its administrative expenses are? I think you have to be.
I am, as long as they don't stop paying themselves.
You know, and there's a scary aspect of all of this, which is if the whole thing goes askew in some way, there is no power in the board to just say, no, we're calling it quits. This corporation is done. So, you know, if there were gross mismanagement or something like that, there's no trigger that gets to be pulled, and there's no way around that, I don't think, except more control by the board in appointments, reporting, auditing, stuff like that.
No,
Which
I agree.
We've done our best to provide for.
I guess I come back to my question quarterly. Is that too quick? That just seems like, strikes me as we're sitting on them. I was thinking annual.
I can live with annual.
What if you required quarterly financial reports, but the payover doesn't have to happen at that time?
That makes sense.
Yeah, again, I'm thinking about the separation question though, that you're bringing up, but sure. That makes more sense to me.
Yeah, plus,
Good with that?
yeah, we want them raising the beans, not reporting on the activity or see how it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Um,
so for fundraising, we want to start with
I would just go to the town clerk again, same with the minutes.
They have to, in that account that we set up.
Well, she's talking about the reports here.
Oh,
Yeah, they probably would.
at least 30 days prior to the close of or following the close of the fiscal year.
I follow. Yeah. So I would, this begs another question in my mind. It's sort of something that Walter touched on earlier. So this group goes out and they fundraise for 3 years and they raise, I don't know, $150,000. And the whole thing sort of falls apart, which is certainly within the realm of possibility. But they turned over $300,000 to the town of South Palmerston that people have now taken tax deductions on, potentially, some of it. What obligation does the town of South Palmerston have to someone who made such a donation, or someone who gave a grant, even, an organization? If everything just kind of goes to pot, so to speak, or any, do we have an obligation?
Well, so that goes back to the whole purpose of that requirement under 501c3, that it be the funds upon dissolution go to a like-kind organization. With the whole idea being to give the donor some comfort that when they give money, it ultimately, even if it doesn't go to this particular project, goes to one that they might support. So we could be a little bit more specific about what happens to the funds once they're paid over to the town on dissolution, or if the project doesn't come to fruition. And that might make my corporate people feel a little bit better about the 501c3 element of it too. I guess it would be up to you to tell, I mean, it could go to the library, right?
Yeah,
To be directed by the select board for use towards the library or any project similar to this, meaning, some sort of community center / library.
okay, I'm comfortable with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're shaking your head. Well,
Well, yeah. I guess the only thing it doesn't capture are those people or grants that have a caveat that to be used only for, or can only be used for.
yeah. And somebody,
Yeah, that's why I added that last sentence in 3. So I wanted to make sure it was clear that the select board, for the town's purposes, has agreed to comply with whatever those promises are or return them. So if someone were to give a grant that said, very specifically, it has to be used to purchase, let's go back and say, high efficiency windows for the community center. And then there ends up being no community center. You would have to treat that as an earmarked grant and return that money to that person if there's not going to be a community center.
but that gets back to my question, who would have to do that? We would. If it's turned over to us, would we have to do that?
Correct.
And the answer is yes. Or should those types of monies not be turned over to the town if they have those conditional aspects?
I want the select board to be responsible for that money regardless. I don't want it to sit there with the directors. So the project's not going to happen, and that becomes clear, but that entity hasn't disbanded yet. Now they have this person's money. And do they have the wherewithal or the interest of returning it? And who's overseeing them to make sure it's done properly?
Okay, I'm okay taking that responsibility on, but that does put the town on for that, which is fine. It's sort of like we're gonna have obviously gonna have a dedicated account for this, but in that, you potentially could have a couple of sub-dedicated accounts that have to be returned.
We already have that,
We had it in our.
because it's in that account says, that's the one where you can get your money back.
Right, yeah. So, okay, I just want to make sure that we're same thing there. Okay. We good with indemnification? We good with dissolution? Gotta change the project.
Right.
Yeah, and let's look at this more carefully then because of what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Also, I have to fix Board of Selectmen.
Yes. So like you were saying, this specifies that the only way to stop it is if they succeed. And there's no way to stop it if they fail.
I welcome suggestions on how you might use the money if there's not going to be this project.
I,
Can it be added to the Randall Hopkins Library Trust? Or is that closed?
Walter's has a question.
There's a trust that was established by the will of a resident. And there are many trusts that he and his wife established, but one of them is for use of it's for the library. There are actually two of those. One that's operating and the other is the big one. So could the funds, if the corporation dissolves and it has money, could they end up in that trust, or do you think it's closed because of the estate?
Yeah, I think it's closed. A trust is only funded by the trust documents. You can't just give money to it later on. So what I have now is assets conveyed to the town of South Thomaston upon dissolution shall be used in the discretion of the select board toward the South Thomaston Library or an alternative project for a community center and or library. It actually should not be at the discretion of the select board.
Discretion of the
Shall be
town.
used as may be appropriated.
I'm fine with that.
There will always be a library. So even if it's, you don't appropriate it all at once, you want to keep your options open. You could give, 20,000 of it in year one and 20,000 in year two, et cetera, until it's all gone, or you could hold it all while you kind of rethink the whole project.
Okay. So now we're on 10-1. So here basically here, you give the select board the veto power, but obviously I assume the idea is to keep it separate. We can't force an amendment on them. We can only approve what they send to us.
Exactly.
And we can't reach around them and enact something, so.
Correct. And again, this is something that might be nixed upon review by someone who knows more than I do, but I mean, it would obviously be very scary for, them to be able to totally, overhaul these bylaws a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, I agree. So the Jeff's concern of runaway.
And not tell anyone.
Right. These bylaws shall take effect I'm on the next one now, 11-1. From time of their adoption. Do you mean the adoption at town meeting?
No, town meeting isn't adopting these.
Well, I thought they were.
No.
Which brings us to the article.
So the article is authorizing you all essentially to form the corporation, but you can't. There's an incorporator of a corporation, and then there's the board of directors. So the incorporator files the stuff with the Secretary of State, and you essentially will designate me as the incorporator, and then I'll sign on the town's behalf to form the corporation. And then there will be an organizational meeting of the corporation, at which point the board of directors, who have now been appointed by the select board, will come together, and they will, as their first order of business, appoint officers, and their second order of business, actually switch that, adopt bylaws and then nominate officers.
Okay, so shouldn't we specify that? Oh, we just did it.
Yep.
At their, okay, so should we say at their initial meeting? That was my whole point. So, okay. So can we move to the article, guys? All right. So we talked about changing the name. You set forth in proposed bylaws, statutes, warrant, and to accept and appropriate. And wait a minute, and to accept and appropriate all funds raised by. I guess I don't know what you mean by to accept and appropriate all funds raised by the auxiliary. Take and use. You there?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I'm just pulling up the document.
Oh, that's fine. Oh, can you also mark this draft?
Okay, so ask your question again, please.
I'm not sure what you mean by to accept and appropriate all funds raised by and paid over to the town.
Well, you've got the annual payover
Yeah,
by this entity to the town. So this would allow you, upon receipt of that money, to put it into a separate account
okay,
for that purpose. The other way around this would be to take out two entirely and just make sure that every year there's a line in the budget for revenue from this to be directed to this standing account.
so when you say appropriate though, are you talking basically expending?
No, allocate toward an account.
All right, but at some point we might want to spend money for planning purposes.
You would be able to do that as well.
Well,
Once it's
yeah, I guess-
allocated into that account, then you have the ability to save it, spend it, do as you wish for that purpose.
I guess I'd just be more comfortable if it clearly gave us the authority to expend it. In sort of layman's terms.
Well, so, I mean, every town meeting article that you vote on towards the budget is to raise and appropriate for X, right? And it's the appropriate that gives the authority to spend. So I mean, it says to fund the planning and construction.
Okay, I don't know, I just thought it would be cleaner and clearer to people that they were actually giving us authority to spend money.
Okay.
Spend this money. Because planning some of that could happen early. For example, I mean, one of the perfect example is, you get a rudimentary design with a elevation picture, that always helps fundraising, but that's gonna potentially cost money. All I'm saying is just, can we throw the word expend in there?
Okay, so I said to accept and appropriate all funds raised by said corporation and paid over to the town in the select board's discretion to be maintained and or expended for the planning and construction of a library and community center at the former Guilford Butler School.
Okay. Also, I don't like the word school in here. That again refers to my mind back to the current building site or property or but I don't know if it's a former site.
The site of the former Guilford Butler School.
Yeah, because I guess technically now it's not the Guilford Butler School.
Right.
Even that's how everybody refers to it as the Guilford Butler School. Okay, and you answered my question about the incorporator. So you envision that being just an administrative role that you could play?
Yep.
Okay. And then I don't know about 3. I think that's going to require us to reconvene the budget committee. It's just a real pain in the neck, and if we don't go to them every time we spend legal money, we have a legal line in our budget. So I would just assume, unless you think this is going to be very expensive, I'm reluctant to ask the town for money.
Well, as I mentioned, I think this is probably a $1,500 prospect, even including the time I've spent so far. So if you have the wiggle room within your projected legal budget, do that. If you need more in the legal budget later on, for whatever reason, you can always figure that out.
Well, and I think when we get to the point of chasing 501(b) status, we may have to get some donations, even if at that point they're not tax exempt. I mean, we've sort of committed not to put town money into this. In a sense, I mean, that was the recommendation in the report, and the article said to accept the report. And that was part of it. So I just think we should strike 3.
So don't you think you should seed the corporation with some money? For instance, in terms of getting the 501c3 status, it really should be them, not us, the select board, the town that's getting that 501c3 status. We're not the corporation.
Right.
So
And
do you
that's
want
why I
to seed them, with $2,000 for initial operating expenses? I know that also involves reconvening budget committee and such, but how else do you get around that?
Well, we could solicit donations. They wouldn't be tax deductible. Well, if they made them to the town, they may be. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't mind putting a seed article in front of the town meeting, although I hate to reconvene the budget committee, and I really don't want to go through that. We don't have time. But I definitely wouldn't want to put it in this article and sink this article.
And again, the whole purpose of this committee or this entity is to raise money. So if they can't raise their seed money, then we're off to a poor start with the people we selected.
Would you feel comfortable enough essentially writing a check out of the legal budget and giving it to the corporation with the proviso that it's used for legal and administrative expenses?
No.
Yeah, just assume pay it directly.
I would, if they can't raise any money, I kind of agree with Jeff. If we can't raise enough money to even get 501c3 status, then we got a problem.
Not really. I mean, who's going to want to give money that's not tax deductible?
And I'd give a couple $100.
Yeah, you can only deduct so much.
Yeah.
Donations now anyway.
I mean, I'm to the point where I just get a standard deduction anyway, so.
That's right.
I don't know. Well, I think the sense is we definitely want to strike 3.
And it's not just because of the seed money and the budget committee. I think if we attach any money to this warrant article, it will fail.
Yeah.
Because we've told the town a bazillion times, this whole process is not gonna cost any money. Tax money, right, yeah. And we have anticipated some of your legal costs associated with this in the budget we've already proposed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can, most of the costs that you're incurring right now are gonna come out of our current budget. And then we reset on July 1. So it strikes me that, I mean, when's our town meeting?
June 28th.
We got 3 days to file the paperwork.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we have, I won't create a new client or anything unless somebody makes me at the firm for the corporation. We'll just get everything for the 501c3 set up, you know, doing it out of the kindness of the town's heart to assist the corporation. And then once the corporation exists, we would, and has a board of directors, they would be able to pull the trigger on that and vote to, you know, submit everything to IRS that's already been prepared.
So you're talking about, so you didn't misspeak there. You did say the 501c3 paperwork.
Correct. So the town essentially would direct me to have that all ready to go so that the corporation can pull the trigger on it once it's formed and has a board.
And
You'd run it out of the existing legal budget.
Step one is you gotta form the corporation.
Right. I mean, we can't file the 501c3, but we can get all the paperwork ready.
But we can file as soon as the town meeting vote. Let me just back up, walk this through. Step one is to form the corporation. Step two is for the corporation to seek 501c3 status.
Correct.
So
all I'm saying is we'd get all the documents, just like the bylaws. We're giving them the bylaws. We did that work product for their benefit. We would do all the 501c3 stuff for their benefit, but none of this gets put into effect until the board of directors can take a vote to initiate it.
Okay, but you're also talking about preparing the paperwork to create the corporation ahead of time.
Exactly. Just doing it in the same way.
Okay, now that, and that's really, I mean, that's virtually nothing.
To do the 501c3?
No, the corporation.
Yeah, no, to do the corporation, that's nothing. That's $140 filing fee and, you know, a couple of hours of paralegal time.
Yeah, at most, it's a 2-page form.
Yep.
And run it over to the Secretary of State's office.
Exactly.
And so we can definitely do that piece. Now, how much is it to do the 501c3 paperwork? That's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, I haven't asked about this particular 501. You know, everyone is a little bit more complicated, but I think 1,500 was the last quote I got when I asked about this.
1,500 just for the 501c3 piece.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I
So-
think that included the state formation of the corporation as well. But like you said, that's a pittance.
Oh, are we ready to move on that? I mean, I'm on the corporation. I'm not so sure about the 501c3, but what do you guys think? Yeah, I mean, I hate to spend the money and then this article goes down to defeat.
I think we've spent the money already, a lot of it already.
I think you would at least want to go through this process of, you know, talking to the library and community center or committee about this document, making sure the whole idea doesn't implode.
Okay.
And then, you know, and then give me the go ahead to get started on that. But before we even go to that step, I would like to take this document to my corporate people to make sure there's nothing structurally problematic about this. And then have a meeting with that group, if that goes okay, then start on the 501c3 stuff.
But we're running out of time here. I mean, we got, Jeff's gonna be out. We got our next select board meeting to finalize our warrant on the 10th. And if we're gonna convene a meeting, we got 5 days notice on that, so. I think I would rather get a meeting scheduled. I'd rather get the draft out. I don't know how long it's gonna take you to run this by your corporate people. I'd like to get the draft out with the caveat that some things may need to be changed if that take time.
Well, when you want to have a meeting with that group though, again, right?
Definitely, but we gotta get it scheduled and.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead and schedule it and share the document once I've cleaned it up and say that it's also being sent to Preddy. This is the draft the board worked with the attorney on, but it's also getting reviewed by the corporate team at Preddy. If there are changes, we'll have those to you at the meeting, but for now, here's the draft for your review.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can get it looked at, if you set the meeting for a week from now, I can probably get somebody to look at it, before the actual meeting date, but I wouldn't have it 5 days before.
No, and we can send it out ahead of time so they can look at it and formulate their questions. Okay, so I think what we'll do then is when we come out of here, we should schedule a meeting with that group, or maybe pick a couple of dates. That accommodates when you're gonna be back. So, I think, are we good with Kristen? I'll let her go? Thank you. Okay.
Okay, I will, I'll send you redlined and clean versions of this that we worked on today, as well as the updated article. And I will go ahead and send it to probably Emily White at my firm to take a look at the 501 aspect of it.
Okay, and I'm just gonna ask Jeff, Andrew, or Walter, including myself, if we see something that we thought we agreed to today, respond directly to Kristen. Not between us, I mean, you can see us, but, if it's something, oh, we didn't agree to that, so, but, okay, sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks, bye. So Terry, we're gonna come out of executive session and try to.
Oh, Terry, real quick, you might want to, let me see if I can give the host back to you so I don't kill your meeting. All right, there you go. I'll see you all later.
Thank you.
I'm not good next Monday, but
Well, I'll wait till you come back. All right.
Executive session?
So we've exited from the executive session, and we are going to schedule a meeting, or pick a couple of dates to try to schedule a meeting with the facilities committee to review a draft warrant article and proposed draft bylaws for the nonprofit corporation related to the Guilford Butler Library Community Center project. And Walter left for a minute, so we're gonna wait till he comes back. But Jeff, when are you going to be available, even if it's by Zoom?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna be back at home on Monday the 2nd, I think. Maybe the 3rd at the latest. So I'm good on the 4th or the 5th.
Okay.
And again, pretty much all day.
Is this the 4th? Is this room tied up on the 4th with Conservation Commission?
I'll have to go look. Is that the second
No, it's the first Wednesday.
person? I'll do the second Wednesday.
I don't know.
I don't know what you're talking
Um,
about. The fourth, yes, they did just ask if they could use it because they didn't think they'd have internet at the library
on the 4th,
on the 4th, May 4th.
but they usually meet on the second Wednesday, you said.
I'm thinking of the library committee. So who's
Oh, okay.
Sandy Wiseman sent me an email, wanted to know if they could use this on the 4th.
Oh, Well, maybe we could piggyback with them. And then we can skedaddle.
Yeah, that's, if they're meeting on the fourth, that's like.
Maybe I should just call right now. Does fourth work for you?
Yep.
Why don't we just see if we can do that, put it to bed? Do I have a number? I think I do. Well, I mean, I hate to commit to it, especially if they have a speaker coming or something like that, but we could always,
If not, I don't know, we need to meet with them, right? That's the whole objective.
yeah. Well, why don't we,
So we use the fifth as a backup.
well, yeah, but that's calling them out 2 nights in a row.
I mean, anything we do is gonna, if we can't do it on the fourth, we're gonna end up having to call them out.
Yeah. Well, let's, I can't imagine that we couldn't fit it in either at the end or the beginning of their meeting, or maybe they could even start their meeting 15 minutes early or something, if they have a speaker or something lined up. I don't know what their agenda is, so do we want to assume on that for now? Does the 5th work for you, both of you guys, if we have to go?
Yeah, it does.
Well, maybe that was. No. Weather changing every Pennsylvania, why do I care? All right, so the 5th would be a backup. And that's not planning board, right?
No,
They're not meeting in May, are
They're not meeting in April,
they? Oh, maybe they are.
they meet the third,
third.
Thursday.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Jeff, good luck on Thursday.
Yes, good luck.
Yeah, I gotta get a COVID test today. And my niece, Alicia, Melanie's daughter, just took over the 39th Squadron. as commander.
That doesn't mean anything to me. What does that mean?
Well, she's either the first or the second female squadron commander for a flying C-130. Yep. The squadron she's taken over is the 39. The squadron I was the commander of, the 40th. We were sister squadrons at Pope when I was there, but now they're both at Dias. So it's a pretty cool thing.
Okay. Well, good luck. Thank you, Terry.
Is she the Princeton all everything? No, that's the other daughter. It's Jackie is the Princeton All-Star. Working for just about any law firm that she wants to. She's just now getting her law. Did she finish? She might have already.
We both took her,
yes.
You go to UT?
No, I couldn't remember.
No.
in Dias in Texas is the one that went to the airport.
So how